James is going to be talking about this book.
Rags. For it's a little hard to tell what it is.
Eating some oatmeal.
Yeah.
And I'm drinking some nog. It's
Oatmeal nog.
oat nog. And it was 54 cents for a container. And then the oatmeal was 75% off at Bulk Barn. So that's why we're eating this. We normally wouldn't eat this sort of fancy stuff with the sugar in it and all that, but
How much did you say it was off?
75% off
Well,
for
that's
the
awesome.
oatmeal and 54 cents for the nog. So
Yeah.
there we go. I want your head to be in it.
Prices.
So yeah, the woman at the checkout at Superstore,
She was shocked.
she said, "Why is it so cheap? Is it because it's dented, or is it because of something else?" And I was like, "Well, it would be Christmassy, so maybe that's why it's cheap." And then I was like, "But either way, I don't really care if it's dented." So, but as you can see, it's pretty dented.
I guess.
Hot. And both of these products came from British Columbia, Canada. I noticed the little Canadian flag there, and I'm like, okay, so is it made in Canada, or is it there? Are they just marketing it as such?
Might be British.
And so
It's hard to
I
say.
looked, and yeah, it's British Columbia. Well,
British Columbia.
Yeah,
Thank you, British Columbia.
Products were sourced from, but maybe. And this oatmeal was British Columbia too, but I mean it says coconut sugar and spices, so I mean you know that the coconut sugar sure didn't come from British Columbia. But in any case, we'll see what James has to say about it.
Well, it might be a little bit
might be
hot.
too hot yet. And I bought bananas were 44 cents a pound at Superstore, so
Not
I
like
thought,
us to give
okay.
advertisements.
No,
for a
but
store.
that's very cheap. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to buy lots of bananas. So I bought them as green as the greenest ones they had there, and for 44 cents a pound. And I thought, well, they'll ripen up, and then James can have them with this oatmeal. What do you think about the oatmeal?
It's pretty good.
That's good.
It'd probably be pretty bland, but the eggnog with the, what were you saying, cinnamon? What else did they put in it?
I don't know, lots of stuff.
Okay. Anyway.
It says cinnamon and turmeric and nutmeg.
Never guessed turmeric, thank heavens.
No.
Turmeric's
Well, they needed to make it yellowish, right? Because they needed to market it as nog, right? But I figured
I'd rather have it than eggnog. I can't stand eggnog.
Yeah. I figured this time instead of the bananas, we'd have these cherries.
It's awesome. I'm amazed that birds were just flocking around here.
Mm-hmm.
Try and get at these cherries.
All right. So there we are. I might not have been in the camera before, but I will be now.
They know we're around here somewhere.
Yeah, they can hear us. So yeah, go ahead and talk about rags and give the verdict on the oatmeal.
Yeah, the verdict on the oatmeal is two thumbs up.
Good.
Two thumbs up.
Yeah. On the nog too. Very convincing nog.
Oh, yeah. Rags. 4. A journal of creative writing. Not that creative, is it? So volume 4, issue 1. So I guess that, oh man, they came out one every season, looks like. Issue 1, I presume, is volume 4, issue 1. No, hold on a second. Fall. Maybe they had 2 issues, like fall and spring. This would come, presumably, out of the University of Lethbridge. Why do I say that? Oh yeah, editorial board.
Well, I think it's very interesting the way they made the paper cover in the front. They obviously made homemade sort of paper, and that's probably Lethbridge grass in there.
It could be. I don't think it's worth smoking. But, it's a different type of grass. Anyway, I think they call this kind of stuff mudlark breath. Okay. I think they call it rag paper. Yeah.
Well, I'm very impressed with the paper, is what I'm saying.
Well, that makes one of us.
Because they
But,
made it. It looks like they made it. It's authentically. I mean, if it has grass from Lethbridge, which I suspect it does, because it looks like grass, why would they put grass in it otherwise?
Yeah, they might have imported it. I'm just seeing published by Mudlark Press, a division of Mudlark Inc. Amazingly enough, I don't subscription rates $10 per year. What? That doesn't say how many
How many volumes you get for that?
Mudlark writers collect. Okay. Some people never give up on these crazy ideas.
Well,
So-
is it good? Is it worth, like, if you paid the $10, would you be, and you got, say, 5 volumes, would you think it was worth it?
If you believe in charity, right? But for people getting money for nothing, well, it's awesome. So, editorial board. There's a person on here I work with, and I really like Jillian Watkins, but I don't think that she'd be actually making the decisions. See, number one is a guy called Martin Ort. I knew him as Martin. And I always had an S to his name, or tried to, Smarty Ort. And it's spelled a little bit different, but I call him, I drop out one of the O's, and I drop out the D, because it's a Dutch kind of name, O-O-R-D-T. And I call him a kitchen Ort. And a kitchen Ort is kind of a scrap that you chuck away from the kitchen. So they're not actually that.
Like compost?
Yeah, maybe something like that. So Smarty Kitchen Ort is what I called him. I paid him, and several other people did, over the years, not just one semester, a couple of semesters actually. I had to put up with him to theoretically teach me creative writing, and it reminded me, I'm afraid, of when I was going to church. Gave up on that church officially. I gave up on it. I was always skeptical about it. There's fundamentalist Christian. It's called Church of Christ, and I can remember the one preacher just before I retired from the church. I was about 17. He was decided to move back to the United States. We tended to have dudes come in from the United States. It was kind of like a missionary activity. The Church of Christ basically has its functions in places like Tennessee, Texas, maybe some in Kentucky. Not so much in the deep south. It's more like, the Texas is kind of like deep south, but more like, then they had a university in Florida, but, and then they've got the big universities, Pepperdine, out in Los Angeles. Of course, it's nothing like UCLA or USC, which USC, some people might, is that one? That one might be, like flirting with top 20 in the world. It's a Catholic institution. Maybe 30th. Anyway, UCLA's. It might be rated second of all the University of California. Big university. Anyway, I can remember when the preacher left. I was about 17, maybe 16. He was saying, big shake of the hand, felt it all the way up my arm to my shoulder. And he said, I hope that you, because I kind of got the marks back then at school, I hope that you decide to be a preacher. I could have been a preacher. I could have been successful, and stuff like that. I could have been telling the lies like Joel Osteen. Is that his name? Or, never would have I gone like the Marjo Gortner route. It's a long time ago. I think he exposed the sliminess he'd been doing. Roughly 1970s. That's a long time ago. But there's, one person retires and 10 more, come to the breach and stuff like that. Anyway, this guy was a nice preacher, but a lot nicer than Marty Ort was. But Marty Ort was trying to make me into an image of him, and he only had a master's degree, and it wasn't too long after I graduated. I graduated in '81. It was '82. I can remember being at a party where there were 3 people with masters, and I just graduated from university with a BA. And Trivial Pursuit was a new thing. I think it came out at '81, and this party was '81 or '82. We'll say '82. And for some reason or another, no one wanted to be on the team, the teams that had the Masters people on. Why? They would have, except I was there. And they wanted to be on my team. Everyone, even the people with the Masters degree, wanted to be on my team because the team that I was on was smoking hot. Now, so the last time I ever really felt any, I won't say respect, but awe or whatever for someone with a master's was '81. And like I say, '82. And that was officially, I can remember when I was still going to university, one professor was actually a pretty good guy. He was an English professor. He was asking me, what's this word, antinomies, that you're using here? I didn't know. Well, he didn't even say. He said, what's this word here? He didn't even know how to pronounce it. Right? So that's when I was still undergraduate. You got English profs asking me, an English prof, I don't want to exaggerate, asking me what a word meant. And he was by no means, he had, as I recall, a PhD and all that sort of stuff. He's died recently. He's a nice guy, very nice guy. He was honest about what he did. So Marty Ort wanted me to be like him. I wrote poetry even at that point in time way better than him, technically way better. And I doubt if, when it comes to the full gamut of academic subjects and stuff like that, he wouldn't hold a candle to me. Or if he held a candle to me, it'd be like holding a candle up, well, I don't want to exaggerate, but I will anyway, to the sun. Anyway, Smarty Ort. So he put this thing together. Now, there is one pretty good poet in here. I'm amazed they printed him. Richard Stevenson. I've run across Richard. I like him pretty good. And I like his poetry okay. He's published a lot of stuff, kind of got a national profile and things like that. But he actually, in his stuff, he has some things that have some rhyme in there. Ordinarily, you see, like Richard used to teach poetry at the college. And I just know, not just based on his personality, he's a much nicer guy than Smarty Ort was. Smarty's dead, died. He should have died of embarrassment. But Richard Stevenson actually has some technique. He also likes music. I gather he likes jazz, but I worked with his wife for a while, and she'd be playing things like Link Ray and things like that. It'd be from, I presume, his collection. The guy who did Rumble. They say he's the first guy to do kind of like, I guess it'd be distortion. Rock and roll. This would be, I think, back in the 50s. Link Ray. It was shocking to hear that. So I think Richard has quite a collection of music. His ear for music, and it makes a difference when a person's writing poetry. If they, like Marty Ort's the kind of guy, I'm afraid, I don't like jazz, I don't know. A lot of guys his generation rhythm gaga or jazz. I can remember one guy taught me, he said, the 20th century, the greatest writer was James Joyce, and he was teaching me James Joyce. And he's probably right about that, at least technically. And then he said the greatest, artist was Pablo Picasso. He's wrong about that. Salvador Dali would be Pablo Picasso all Hollywood. And Picasso had all sorts of technique, but he was embarrassed to use it. Like it's what you churn out. And then he said the greatest musician was, I think it was Coltrane, John Coltrane. one of those jazz guys. I don't think it's Miles Davis. No, I didn't say anything, but it would be someone at that point in time, maybe Igor Stravinsky or something like that. You see, Joyce was a composer. He composed stuff. He wasn't a performer. He didn't get up and read his own or other people's stuff. Picasso was a composer, a poor one. Salvador Dali was a much better composer. But you see, the jazz guys don't compose. Some of them do, but so often, you get some standard, like Somewhere Over the Rainbow or whatever, or 1, 2, Buckle My Shoe, and then they play over the same changes. Zappa was absolutely scathing about what he was talking about. He was talking about some jazz guys by comparison with Brian Wilson, and it was something of the Beach Boys. And he was talking about an early Beach Boys thing, and he said, this thing, I don't know, it wasn't Surfing USA, which is ripped off of Chuck Berry, but I can't remember what it was. But he said, look at this, it's actually going from 5 to 2 on a cadence. Whereas on a jazz guy, like working with standard, would go 2 to 5 on a cadence. I'm talking about chords, or he was. And he said, he much preferred Brian Wilson's chord relative sophistication. This is early Beach Boys stuff, 64 maybe, 65 at the latest. And what the jazz guys do is they'll throw in they'll muddy up the sound with all sorts of, like 9th chords and 11th chords and 16th chords and stuff like that. Who cares? It's hard to explain, but it's just muddies up the sound oftentimes, especially when that's all you're doing, basically. So they're performers, and they'll do all sorts of stuff. Like Miles Davis, I don't know what his recorded content is like. It's awful. You listen to Miles Davis and you're going, please do some composition instead of just doodling around on a trumpet. I'm not a big fan of trumpet, I gotta admit, in the first place, but have someone like Oscar Peterson doodling around on the piano. Wouldn't you rather hear I'd rather hear a drum solo than I would a trumpet solo. Yeah. Think about it. All the different parts. You see what I'm saying? But, wow. A trumpet solo, I mean, like if you're going to do one of those horn type of instruments, do a saxophone. A saxophone can do all sorts of different sounds. I guess your trumpet, like he'd do some junked out kind of stuff and whatever. But, yeah, give me Chet Baker. You know what I'm saying? Oh my heavens, I shouldn't have said that because poor old Chet was white, so I'm part African American, and my skin color's just advantageous, or whatever the term is.
Yeah, poor Chet.
Yeah.
Being a junkie.
Talk about getting junked out and stuff like that. Anyway, we got some time. I want to talk a little philosophy. You probably want to repair the indoors. Please for philosophy. And that, how much time?
You have lots.
There we go. That's good.
You have like 10 minutes.
Oh, that's good.
Go all out.
So, folks at home, flee to the washroom or flee to the den, basement, flee to your bomb fallout shelter. This is philosophy. So this is basically a popularization, as I've said a few times, many times to Pauline, but on Pauline's podcast here. I believe in repetition. So we'll just go through this sort of stuff. And the other day we were working our way backwards through this stuff because we were just going through all the ridiculous things that have been credited to folks that are popular amongst lefties nowadays. Karl Popper wouldn't be that popular with them. Intelligence is a moral category. Theodore Adorno. What would he know about intelligence? He was a guy, you knew he'd want to shut down Disney. He probably had a lot of stuff to say about rock and roll. hated popular culture, popular music. And, not that, I'm sure he was going around saying, I'm a Marxist. I'm not a Soviet communist. The communists themselves didn't like, for example, the Beatles. Hated the Beatles. But, Paul McCartney gets the last word back in the USSR. You know how lucky you are, boys. He's being a bit sarcastic there. Existence precedes effort. Oh yeah, insofar as a scientific statement speaks about reality, it must be falsifiable. Yeah. I think a lot of people misinterpret this, and Karl Popper might have misinterpreted it himself. He lived to be 92, roughly, years old. That's good. Anyway, they'd say, oh, if something's, you see, lots of people say, if a statement is falsifiable, then it's scientific. And, well, it could be bad science or something like that. Just because it's falsifiable doesn't mean it's good science. It might be just like a huge mistake. So it depends what you mean by science. Science is a method. Okay, you have something that's falsifiable. In other words, the existence of God, is it falsifiable? No. So the existence of time, no, it's not falsifiable. No. I'm not sure if Popper would do that. Here's Paul Fire Abend. Yeah, that's festival evening. That's what his name means in German, roughly. Fire Abend. In Against Method, questions the very idea of scientific method. Wow, Paul Fire. I wish his book was here so I could pretend to throw it away, but I don't believe in, this particular one, Against Method. I don't believe in throwing books away. I'd actually read it, but I'd be suppressing nausea, I'm afraid. Okay, Hans-Georg Gadamer. German dude, and but I don't know where the accent comes. He might it doesn't seem like a Polish name. It's a very different name. History does not belong to us, but we belong to it. Okay. He studied philosophy under Martin Heidegger. Anyway, that's like saying we belong to the Tooth Fairy or something like that. History is not, is reifying history. We don't belong to history. Come on. History is just something that we kind of isolate from all sorts of stuff coming down the tube and things like that. A lot of times, lots of stuff just gets lost in the mix. The only way of knowing a person is to love them without hope. Walter Benjamin, German philosopher, affiliate, just an affiliate. I don't know, like he sounds like a taxi squad dude of the Frankfurt School, a group of neo-Marxists. I put down here paleo-Marxists, but they're not Marxists. They are, Herbert Marcuse believed in turning against the working class. This would be as early as the 1960s, maybe even a little bit earlier, because they'd proved to be unreliable. They had let down and would continue, according to him, to let down the revolution. And so the revolution was going to depend on people of color, women, even, apparently, the lumpen proletariat. Marx would have been turning over in his grave on hearing that, or would have been if he could have heard it. The only way of knowing a person is to love them without hope. Like this Walter Benjamin is the kind of guys that they're commies. They don't love people. They might say they love people, but it's an abstraction. They're a little bit like the Maoism as interpreted by Mao Zedong. So apparently, the philosopher Mozi, or Mozi is how I prefer to say it. I think it would be Moti is the way I've seen it actually spelled. But I suspect it's Mozi, and I guess in Mandarin it's Mozi. Anyway, I can remember some person saying a while back, maybe about 7 or 8 years back, every religion is about love. Said it almost like Oprah would say. Well, Oprah might have been embarrassed about how overdone it was. Because every religion is about love. What? I said, have you ever heard of Moti? No, never heard. Yeah. Well, how would this individual thinking that every religion is about love? She left out the peace and flowers. But she was meaning peace. I don't know about the flowers, but at any rate, peace as well as love. Love. Go through Mangtse, or don't. I don't care whether you do or not. But you'll find him ripping and rapping on Moti. I'm going to call him Moti. And you can get Mangtse either. You're actually recommended to buy the Dover thing. You're the least bit interested in religion. There's a latter-day Confucian, not that much after Confucius. I don't think he's even 200 years after Confucius. But we'll say roughly 200 years. In between came this dude Moti, in between Confucius and Mencius, or Mangtse. And so apparently, I just found this out recently. One of the favorite philosophers, maybe the favorite philosopher outside of Marx or whatever, of Mao Zedong and his crew was this Mozi, as they called him. Now, what did he do? What made him bad to Mangtse, the Confucian? He preached love. The Confucianism, at least interpreted by Mencius, is not about love. Wake up and smell the coffee, you stupid idiots have been going around saying, every religion is about love. Yeah? But at any rate, yeah. So I shouldn't have to tell you that Mao Zedong and his crew were not about love. They're about another four-letter word, and not starting with L. I'm not starting with F, but H. They were all about hate. Now, the figures I get on the number of people that Mao killed domestically was, hopefully it's inflated, 70 million. That's just within China. That's not including all the people that died from their support of Pol Pot, all the people that died in Vietnam, the support of the terrorists there under Ho Chi Minh, all the people that died in Korea during the Korean War, all the people, well, Lord only knows what's going to happen when Korea notice I said when, not if. When North Korea launches their hydrogen bombs on Lord only knows where. But Walter Benjamin, the only way of knowing a person is to love them without hope. All he's saying to me is he didn't know anyone. Logic is the last scientific ingredient of philosophy. Logic is the last scientific ingredient of philosophy. Rudolf Carnap, I believe it came from Austria, and that's a fascinating sort of thing because it should be what